Good morning, Ms. Wexler. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Ms. Wexler, to get started off today, would you mind going through your qualifications for it in becoming Human Resources Director at Pick It Up Delivery Services?
Sure. Well, as you just said, I'm the Human Resources Director at Pick It Up Delivery Services, and I have my MBA in Human Resources Management from Mid-State University. I also worked at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. For different human resources jobs, and I also drafted many policies for the Pentagon as well.
And during your time while obtaining your MBA at Mid-State University, what types of courses did you take?
I took over 5 seminars on people that had English as a second language, and I also learned about how to communicate with people with different learning disorders such as ADHD. I also took courses on managing employees and drafting policies, and I also learned about dealing with people with different learning abilities such as auditory and visual learners, etc.
And then, have you come into contact in your work experience with people that you just described, employees or coworkers who do use English as a second language or do have different types of learning challenges?
Yes, I mean, I've dealt with people like that all the time, and I understand that they have a lot of difficulty with understanding both the spoken and the written word. Even if they've been longtime English speakers, they may not be able to hear or read as well as native-born speakers, so I make sure to take that in consideration when I draft policies and work with people in the Human Resources Department.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Wexler. Before we go into the policy itself, which is obviously central to this dispute today, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the reasons behind the policy. Why did PUDS put this policy into place?
Well, the attendance and tardiness policy that was put into place was for the benefit of the company. PUDS is it's a fast and largely growing company, both nationally and internationally. It also was implemented for that reason, and also because for the employees, to distribute 20% of the net profits to the employees each year, and we needed to make a solid formal policy to both benefit the company and the employees.
And Ms. Wexler, what was PUD's previous policy concerning employee tardiness and losing out on hours during the day? Did they have a formal policy in place?
No, it wasn't a formal policy. It was just that it was a very flexible policy, and employees were late, they were required to make up the time whenever they could, basically.
And was there any sort of formal system in place for who made sure that they did this, or was it kind of an honor system?
It was an honor system.
And when you came into PUDS, did you see this as an asset to PUDS or something that would be potentially a liability?
Well, like I just said, the PUDS is a very fast-growing company, and to compete with international and national standards, we needed to make a formal policy so employees knew what was expected of them, and also in order to prevent losing profits, because we had the CFO do a study, and they found that we were actually losing money.
And so this money that is being lost is not only money lost to the company at PUDS, but also to PUDS employees as well.
Yep, it comes directly out of the 20% net profits that we give to the employees each year.
So would it be fair to say that consistency was the overarching goal for both the company and its employees in this policy?
Yes, that's fair.
Now, Ms. Wexler, would you please discuss for us a little bit and just give us a brief outline of the policy in general?
Sure. The new attendance and tardiness policy was actually very flexible and very similar to the old policy. It provided that if you were going to be late to work, you needed to tell the supervisor and get permission and make up the time later that day. And if you couldn't make it up later that day, all you had to do was get permission to make it up during that week. And if that policy wasn't abided by, then there were different, punishments, so to speak, for not following the policy.
Ms. Wexler, this policy actually sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, vaguely familiar to the old policy in place at PUDS, just maybe a bit more formalized. Is that an accurate understanding?
Yes, it was actually still very similar to the old policy, but it was obviously had to be more formal for the reasons I stated earlier.
And for the policy, would you mind going through for us for each, how many violations was an employee allowed, and what were the consequences of those violations?
There were 4 violations within 6 months that could possibly lead to the termination of an employee. The first violation, the person would be spoken to, and they would go over and let them know about the policy and let them know that, they violated the policy. The second violation, I would sit down with them and have a talk with them and go over the policy again, let them know exactly what it was, what we were looking for, giving them an opportunity to fix everything, and making sure they had notice. Third violation could result in a suspension without pay, and then the fourth violation is unfortunately termination.
And you did meet. Let's go to the meeting you had with Carol Brzezinski, the plaintiff.
Sure.
And you had a meeting with Ms. Brzezinski after her second violation. Is this correct?
Yes.
And would you please tell us a little bit about that meeting?
Sure. I asked her to come into my office because I wanted to make sure. I knew that she was late before, and then she was late again. So I wanted to make sure that she had noticed, that she understood the policy, that she knew what was going on. So we sat down. She came in, and we sat in my office. And some people may say it's intimidating at times, but I picked a teal color to make sure it was a calming environment. And she sat down, came in, and we made a joke about the jar that I had on my desk. It said ashes of employees, and I got it while I was in graduate school. And so she made a joke about it, and so I told her about a previous conversation I had with the owner about how I might end up in there if I don't, do my job correctly. So we laughed about that and thought it was pretty funny. And then I went over the policy with her. I told her it was her second violation. I had her sign a document saying that she knew and understood the policy. And also I asked her if she had any questions about it, and that if she understood it. She said she did. And that basically concluded our meeting.
So Ms. Wexler, from your description of the meeting, am I to understand that Ms. Brzezinski did not ask any questions about the policy?
No, she didn't. She said she understood it completely.
She didn't say anything about being confused or not understanding the policy?
Nope.
And Ms. Wexler, what is the discipline, or the discipline for an employee after their third violation?
The third violation, like I said, is that they can be suspended without pay.
And how long can an employee be suspended for?
I believe it's 30 days.
And how long did you suspend Ms. Brzezinski for? It wasn't the full 30 days.
Oh, no. It was, we suspended her for 5 days without pay.
So much less than you could have made it a longer suspension.
Yeah, we could have.
And finally, Ms. Wexler, did you, at the time during the course of Ms. Brzezinski's discipline, did you know that she had difficulty with English as it is her second language?
No, I didn't.
And did you know that she struggled with learning challenges due to ADHD?
No.
And you didn't know that she was struggling to understand the policy because she didn't ask any questions?
Nope, she didn't ask any questions, and actually nobody asked any questions. We put the policy in the break room on a bulletin board. We put the policy on the website. I had a copy of the policy in my desk. Ashley Dover had a copy of the policy, and nobody asked any questions. And I said I was available to the employees 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I didn't get any. I got a few questions at home, calls at home, which I really appreciated, so that we could clarify some things. But other than that, I had no questions about it at all.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Wexler.
Thanks.